welcome to the Distinguished Twins podcast. I'm Kane.
I'm Professor Anderson, and as you can see, we have a distinguished guest here today. This is Celina. I know Celina personally. I've known her for almost 3 years now. I met her prior to applying to my PhD program at Arizona State University, and when I met her, I mean, it's like we clicked right away. We share a lot of the same interests as far as wanting to help, as far as communities, as far as focusing on marginalized populations, social issues, so on and so forth. So, Celina, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
All right. Hey,
Yeah.
well, thank you guys so much for having me today.
Uh-huh.
So as Vincent said, I am in the School of Community Resources and Development at ASU. I was working on a master's degree when I met you, when you were considering the PhD program.
Yes.
I jumped right into the PhD program after finishing, so that was last year.
Yes.
So working on the PhD now, and so I don't know what you like to know.
Yeah.
I'm from here,
Okay.
born
Okay.
and raised in Tempe, Arizona.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. My mom was heavily involved in community development work when I was a child.
Oh.
So I do believe that's what brought me to the work.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
Sort of seeing things move for her from being a neighborhood association like member and then starting to organize in our neighborhood, eventually growing to start a nonprofit to address some of the challenges that we saw coming living near the downtown area in Tempe.
Okay.
Knowing that gentrification was coming and hoping to sort of avert some of the displacement that we know
Yes.
Hey,
would come.
buzzwords,
Oh, yeah?
gentrification, displacement.
All right,
Yeah.
cool.
Right?
So
We just spoke
we're
on
in
that.
it.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, seeing some of the, challenges that she faced, but also a lot of the privilege that she held sort of not over, like she was holding it over, but that she had as opposed to some of our other neighbors who didn't, who were not as white, not as middle class as we were privileged to be. And sort of, seeing all these dynamics, the way that bigger institutions work with residents or do not work with residents, all these things, sort of opened my eyes just as enough to, issues around justice, issues around privilege, that sort of, carried me eventually,
There you go.
to this place where I do a lot of my thinking about institutions, whether they are small nonprofits, city municipalities, anchor institutions like ASU,
Yes.
who all generally, come to the table hoping to help marginalized communities.
Right.
But what that often means is kind of imposing their values, honestly,
Yeah.
imposing their way of life, what they believe to be a good life,
There you go.
on people who generally have a different idea of what that means.
Bottom line.
And so the way that I believe institutions should come to the table when they have that kind of inclination, they should come to the table with a whole lot of characteristics that they're generally not
Yeah.
these days, right?
Exactly.
So, here I am in the belly of the beast, ASU being, socially embedded university, very much interested in engaging communities and, even the Watts College
There
of
you
Public
go.
Service and Community Solutions is all about, making communities better,
Yes.
investing in communities. Part of that is investing in the communities around them here in Phoenix. The Watts Endowment specifically slated to do work in Maryvale.
Exactly.
All of those, there's very good intention, but there's also a lot of red flags for me.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So I spend my time thinking about that. My master's thesis was looking at sort of trying to develop a framework for assessing power dynamics between institutions and the communities with whom they work. Their community partners, as they're often called from the university standpoint.
Yes.
So thinking about, what are some of those characteristics? How can we tell if there's respect? How can we tell if things are going about in a sort of ethical way?
Yeah.
And when it's sort of coming down, like top down, where the university is, ultimately holding their power over communities.
Exactly.
And there's not really the kind of, reciprocal, equitable partnership that they talk about wanting to achieve.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, in those situations, all stakeholders must be heard. And their opinions and their voices should be valued, and they should be integrated and incorporated into the work, and and that's how ultimately we hope that it would play out. But I'm with you on that, and of course knowing you for so long, and just the struggles that you have with these institutions and how they interact with these communities. It's like you say, it's not equitable most of the time, and again, you hold that power over these communities, and, next thing you know, it's like, hey, we're going to put a playground out here because we think you need a playground out here. And it's like,
your kids are obese. That's really what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Your kids are fat. And so we are going to put a playground.
Yes.
And also there's going to be a track. So moms, make sure you're walking.
There you go. Right. And it's like, but you didn't ask that if, what they wanted, and they probably wanted a garden. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we're certainly not talking about the systemic oppression that leads to the kind of issues that they are looking to solve in these communities.
Yes.
Bottom line, right?
Like who's keeping them from healthy food,
Exactly.
Might it be their factory job?
Exactly.
But we don't want to talk about that.
We don't want to talk about that.
Well,
part.
this is community development.
There
This is
you go.
not political science.
Exactly.
This is not economics.
There you go.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. So as far as I know you said your mom was involved, and I think that is awesome. Gosh, to recognize. Did she ever tell you how she recognized her privilege and decided to help?
These are conversations that we have more and more now.
Okay.
And she found her way into academia as well.
Okay.
When I was maybe around 8 or 9, we had some changes in my family household, and my parents' divorce. My mom actually left her role as executive director of the nonprofit that she was leading.
Okay.
And it was just sort of things came up into the air. They landed, and she started a PhD program at ASU, actually.
Okay.
In our sister college of public affairs.
Okay.
So she got her PhD in public administration and has sort of existed in that area of academia for a while. And just in the past, 3-5 years or so, has sort of found her way back into community development in the academic landscape. It's very interesting. So now, now we're actually, pseudo teaching together, researching together, writing together. And I think the trajectory that I have had that sort of took me a little bit deeper into the sort of social justice and that kind of, literature and whatnot, brought to me a different perspective, a different lens to look at this stuff. And so it's been really cool, watching our relationship sort of move into one of like slightly more like peer, she's like a mentor to me,
Exactly.
but there are also things she recognizes and says that I am like teaching her at this point, which is really cool. Yeah.
I mean, that's not surprising.
So, yeah, when I was
very smart.
When I was in my undergrad, and for a few years after that, off and on, I was a part of an organization called Surge, which is Showing Up for Racial Justice. It's a national organization that has chapters. There used to be a chapter in Phoenix, primarily or predominantly white people working against racism. Not exclusively white people. So I'm like,
of course,
right?
But yeah, so that really like opened my eyes to to a lot of stuff, and that's I mean, that has really has really helped me, I think, get to the place where I am.
Yes.
Yes.
Like in terms of seeing the systems
Yes.
as what they are, seeing the culture, like what I would and others like Temo Kun would identify as white culture is really this sort of the like dominance and performance-based culture that we see in most of our institutions.
Right.
Sense of urgency, right? Most people that I know who are not white will talk about their people as like always being late.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, that's like a white thing.
Yeah.
It's like it's a profession. We call it professional to be on time.
Yes.
There you go.
But that is dominance culture.
Yeah.
It is white culture.
Uh-huh.
These like thinking about things that way has
Absolutely.
really, kind of blown my mind open
Wow.
in terms of thinking about like when institutions or people from institutions meet communities that are not steeped in that culture.
There
Yes.
you go.
Yes. I didn't think about
You
that.
can start
Right.
to see a
Yeah.
lot,
Yeah.
like what is like going on interpersonally, and then also sort of on a systemic level in terms
Yes.
of that imposing of culture and,
Yeah.
and definition of good life.
Yes.
Bottom line.
So yeah, I mean that I did not learn that in my community development,
Of course.
but
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's cool. I know you said your mom was in it and then you got into it, but when you were younger, did she sit you down and say, hey, listen, you're in a more advantageous position than a lot of your, say, minority peers?
Right.
Did she say that to you, or did you just kind of come into that, recognition yourself?
I don't like recall a lot of those like conversations.
Okay.
Like I couldn't point to them in my memory. But I did. I grew up in a very like racially and ethnically diverse
Okay.
and income diverse
Yes.
community.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
So like I was a racially minority in my elementary and my middle school.
Okay.
And I was also like more well off than a lot of my peers.
Right.
So I saw that.
Yes.
And I don't think that our conversations were super explicit, but I
Yes.
think that there was an understanding.
There you go.
And I was always taught to be grateful for the privileges that I have.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I remember specifically narratives that my mom taught me around like our Latino neighbors, some documented, some not,
Right.
being some of the hardest working people.
Okay.
And so that was like that was something that I remember being taught, that there are people who have to work harder
Yes.
and who do step up to the plate,
Yes.
And the one thing that I don't think we really did talk about is like, what does that mean for me?
Yes.
Okay.
There is the like, yes, I can be grateful for the privileges that I have, but there's this other thing, like if other people have to work harder
Yes.
and do step up to the plate and work harder, like do I not deserve what it is that I have?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Should I be worried about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Should I be working harder and achieving more because of what I started with?
Gotcha.
Is that like the natural wave things? Like, and I was definitely brought up with, a strong like work ethic. My mom's father was a Methodist minister.
Okay.
So for them it's like you're going to heaven if you work hard.
There you go.
And you're not if you're not working hard.
Yeah.
So as my mom left the church when she was young, definitely before she had me, but that's a cultural thing that doesn't go away when you change your religion.
Yes.
Bottom line. Exactly.
But yeah, so I think a lot of the like more nuanced understandings around race and structural oppression like did come much later. But I think my mom set like a good
great,
ground,
exactly.
like the
Great
foundation.
foundation.
For that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, because ever since my brother, entered the program, he's really been speaking about you honestly. Like this is not just fabrication.
Yeah.
He really has. Because he can appreciate the just the transparency and the honesty.
Yes.
And so you speak about noticing that you have these privileges when you were younger. how do you feel about that today? Do you feel like you should work harder, or because I think a lot of the white society, when this white privilege word is thrown out, maybe there's some guilt to it. But so how do you feel about that today? Do you feel like, I have this privilege, so do you feel like I should help, I should give back to help level the playing field? Or do you feel like if I work harder, then I don't feel like my privilege is giving me the advantage if I know I'm working just as hard as the next person?
Good question.
Yeah, that is a very good question. I personally, like more recently, have felt like part of my journey to, I guess, like liberate myself a bit, which I do believe is necessary. I believe all people need to be liberated.
Absolutely.
That, any work that we're doing on ourselves is good work.
Yes.
Part of that for me recently has been sort of unlearning some of my like understandings of like what it means to like earn what I like to be good enough, like to perform well. I like didn't even realize how much I had wrapped up in that, and feeling like I should be doing better than I am, and constantly just pushing.
Right.
So realizing that is not like just natural, that's not a natural state.
Exactly.
That is like something that was taught to me. That is like a part of my culture. And that's something that I can actually kind of drop and like let go of a little bit.
Okay.
That's been important to me.
Okay.
And am I dominating as much as I used to? Maybe not.
Right.
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 And like, am I gunning for an R1 university that I, and like to be the best of the best, like, and all that? No, honestly, because I'm realizing that that's not what feels healthy to me.
Exactly.
I mean, I want to have a career. I feel passionate about the work that I do, but like, I also want to raise babies, and I want to be around for it.
There you go.
And like I want to get my hands in the dirt on a regular basis.
There you go.
Like I want to. I don't want to be sitting at a computer my whole life. So there's like there's that has like changed for me a bit. I do, on the other hand, feel strongly about sort of using the privilege that I have to in a good way, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I think about how easy it was for me to get access to the institutions that I'm a part of. The job that I have, I find myself in rooms with like really powerful people. And while part of me says like, man, this stuff is toxic, and I want, I don't want to be in this world. I think it's ugly, it doesn't feed me. It only takes from me. At the same time, I'm like, it is a privilege that I am in this room.
True.
And like whether you believe in God or you believe in fate or you believe in whatever, like here I am in this room with powerful people.
There you go.
And here I am in a room with powerful people, having the framing and the lens and the perspective that I have.
Exactly.
And the commitment that I have, like to to do a tiny little piece of undoing the like oppression and privilege world that we live in.
Exactly.
So I do believe, like, I still feel an obligation to utilize my privilege in some kind of way.
Okay.
Like as much as it would be nice to just, go off the grid and like grow my own food and just say,
exactly.
There you go.
There you go.
Like I feel like here I am, let me do something with it, but let it not be my everything.
I got
you.
Yes. I like that.
And I can slightly piggyback off of that as far as, you understanding your privilege, right? And some of that privilege may be because you have white skin, right? And even with us, our privilege, we knew growing up, we were a little bit more privileged than the kids around us. And even where we are today, understanding the privilege that we have. So there is an obligatory duty in a sense to give back, like you say, and try to make it a little easier for those who maybe didn't have the advantages that we had. And,
Absolutely.
And help to undo some of this oppression, as you just stated. So, I mean, I think it goes hand in hand.
Yes.
Definitely. But I love your response to that.
And because I was going to touch on that as well. And, you know, I get in this mindset of, just like you said, like, am I doing enough?
There you go, right?
Going hard. Because we made it out of a very toxic environment,
right?
You know, not necessarily in our home, but our, you know, the community around us.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of, you know, oppression and a lot of lingering effects of, you know, previous oppression.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But, and we do, you know, when we talk about this term white privilege, a lot of people like get uncomfortable. You know, they just because they might not be making a lot of money, they'll say, "Where's my white privilege?"
Exactly.
While at the same time, I can tell you, yes, you know, we are part of a marginalized group, but at the same time, even in this world, because our skin is lighter, we have privileges, certain privileges.
Yeah, colorism.
Or, you know, colorism, exactly.
Yes,
so we can recognize those things.
Yes.
And when you recognize those things, you don't. You can let go of this notion that, oh, maybe I am better than the person that's darker than me, you know?
Exactly, right.
Because you're taught these things, and it's very toxic. So
exactly.
I love
That's
it.
a great point.
Yeah, I just like the fact that you can, you know, admit those things, because we admit those things, you know, within our communities, but, you know, we're not the dominant society either, you know what I mean?
But we do have a hand in somewhat, say the lighter skin, and helping to, in a sense, maybe demoralize or contribute to the vituperation of darker skinned African Americans or just black people in general. So, you know, and I just, it burns me to no end when I just see the light skinned people do this or dark skinned people. It just
that's so
burns.
toxic.
It's so toxic,
so
and we
divisive.
don't understand that we're perpetuating this hate, this division, and so on and so forth. And so for me, it's like, you know, recognizing, like you say, that. Yeah, absolutely. You know, and we, you know, of course, we could go very deeply into this conversation as far as TV shows and stuff that we grew up watching. And
exactly.
You know, you just saw that privilege if you did have lighter skin, and it's all been ever since the days of slavery, right?
Yes.
And so again, you know, to make that connection, you know, to scaffold from, you know, Celina's experience, and then, like you say, to talk about ours.
Yes.
I mean, it's dope. I mean, definitely. I think when you acknowledge it, now you have to be accountable.
Absolutely.
You have to be accountable.
But if you stay in denial, you'll continue to perpetuate it.
Exactly. And so, and that's the healthy place.
Exactly.
Which is why I fell in love with academia.
Yeah.
I mean, I can honestly say, you know, whenever I first met you, you know, I came into the classroom and I'm like, I'm sitting back and I'm just chilling. and then here I see this white individual just going hard. Like, I mean,
I do go hard in Rick.
Oh my God, you do. I mean, I'm like just talking about racial injustices, and I'm like, you know, and from an intellectual perspective, from an which can be supported by empirical data, right?
Yes.
And so it's just like, I'm just sitting back and I'm listening. I'm like, this is dope, right? And so, and Rick, you know, he's just listening, and, you know, your mom, and because of course she was visiting that day, and I'm just sitting back, I'm like, this is it.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable because it's like we can actually be honest and transparent, and there isn't this uncomfortability to where we're just like, no, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
No. Let's not talk about that or whatever. So, you know, to just sit back and see it, I was like, I love academia because I can actually talk about these things. And even when I teach my students, you know, of course, I'm teaching a lot of conservative white students. You know what I mean? 97% of my student population is white, right? And they're conservative, right? And so, you know, I teach and I talk about these things, and, you know, from an academic standpoint, now have academic freedom, right? To where you can actually talk about these things and bring your statistics and everything. And I have so many students one semester's in, they're like, oh, Professor Anderson, I never knew these things, and so on and so forth, which is why, again, I go back to, I have to have a hand in academia somewhere, because that's where I feel like I can really be me. You know what I mean? Because you can go in the social media world, you can go into the general world, and you can talk about these issues, but you're not going to get much cooperation.
Exactly.
You know, all you see is people tearing each other down. You know, well, what about Chicago? And then, you know, well, you know, what about this? You know what I mean? And so now we're at each other, and there's no progress. You know what I mean? So, like I said, it's
that's
dope.
good.
And we didn't even intend to talk about it, but it's just
I mean, it's such a great topic. You know, you know, just kind of let it flow. But
absolutely.
And so with that all being said,
I know, right?
We're going to transition. Celina, you do identify as, I'll let you, you know, speak on that.
And so, to kick it off, we really wanted to touch on the LGBTQ issues, right?
Yes.
In our country, this has been a hot topic for really the past decade.
Yes.
It really heated up. And so, there's a lot of changes going on in the country. And again, you see a lot of discrimination, but you see some progress as well.
Yes.
So this is something that we really wanted to talk about. You're looking at an extremely intelligent individual who is, very transparent about, the community, has witnessed some things, experienced some things. So we definitely wanted to get into that.
Yes.
And so, as you stated,
Yes.
Celina, as far as the LGBTQ, it's a, I wouldn't, it's an alphabet, right? An acronym, whatever you want to say. What would you identify as, and, tell us a little bit about your experience with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's really important that we started with a conversation about privilege.
Yes.
I like that.
Because, if we're going to, thank you. Good job.
Good job.
Yeah, there it is.
Right.
Thank you, Kate. If we're going to talk about, LGBTQ issues in America,
Yes.
I personally am not facing a lot of the extreme violence that we do see on the community and different, facets of the community.
Yes.
So it is it's complicated, right?
Yes,
There's
absolutely.
this intersectionality, right? A lot of, poor white people say, where's my privilege? Because they're poor and they're like,
Exactly.
Right.
but it's okay, income is kind of, that's a thing.
Yeah, it's a thing. Yes.
There are many identities that we have, some that are, visible and some that are not.
Exactly.
Right. There are physical disabilities that, and physiological mental disabilities that some are visible and some are not.
There you go.
There is, certain queer people who are more visible and some who are not. Right?
Exactly.
Yes.
I mean, generally speaking, people are very well practiced at gender identifying people.
True.
Yes.
Right.
True.
Scanning a room and looking at body types and saying that's a man, that's a woman, that's a man, and we do that automatically.
And think about this
Right.
really quickly, not to cut you off.
Yeah.
We're socialized from birth,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Think about it, right? My wife and I, we had 6 children, right? And you have a couple, right?
Yes.
When our babies are born, they even get different color hats,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So the girls get the pink hats,
Yeah.
the boys
There's
get the blue.
gender reveal parties before
Exactly,
it's even
right?
popped.
Yes. Yes.
So it's like,
know?
I mean, it's again when you're born, you're socialized automatically, right?
Yes.
So it's like that's just the norm.
Yeah,
that's
and
the
you've
norm.
got children's books that you turn the page and it's like, this is a woman,
Right.
this is a man,
Exactly,
this
right?
is a girl,
Yeah.
you are a girl.
Yeah.
Wear
it's-
dresses, play with Barbie dolls,
exactly,
stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So yes, I do identify as a queer person.
Yes.
It is important to me, I guess, as part of my identity.
Absolutely.
There are multiple facets to that. Some of it is I guess more visible than others, and there are aspects of it that I am more out about than other things. So you see me in a crowd, or you see me sitting here,
Yes.
you're watching the video, you're like,
Yes.
that's definitely kind of that's a sort of masculine person, right?
Right, absolutely.
Sort of
You look
dressing
sharp, though.
myself angularly.
Yeah.
I got my suit on because I know I was meeting with you guys.
Oh yeah, you look
Gotta
sharp,
look
man.
it,
Yeah,
gotta
you look
look it.
sharp.
But I also, you're listening to the tone of my voice.
Absolutely.
You're looking at the shape of my jaw,
There you go.
and you're saying that's a woman,
Right.
right?
Yes.
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 But yeah, so I, at one point I did identify as a lesbian.
Okay.
Sometimes I identified as bisexual.
Okay.
It wasn't until a few years ago that I guess I was introduced to a sort of more trans radical community.
Yes.
Okay.
Where I had the freedom and opportunity to explore my own gender.
Okay.
And, eventually, ultimately, came to identify as like I guess non-binary or gender non-conforming person.
Right.
I would love a world with no gender
Okay.
at all. I would.
Okay.
I think I would thrive.
Right.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us would.
Okay.
But yeah, so in my private life, I like go by they them pronouns.
Okay.
Oftentimes in like professional settings, I don't really like introduce that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I kind of just let people gender me as a woman because it's generally more comfortable for people.
Right.
So yeah. I mean, we can get into it.
Yeah. That's you talk about the professional setting, and I mentioned I was reading some research from Harvard about the LGBTQ in the workplace, and I used to work and was a program manager, and I was involved with the diversity and inclusion. It was really big at the place I was working at, and so. Just professionally, I started to notice like, man, it's a real thing, like, of exclusion, because of people's gender identity or sexual preference.
Exactly, right.
And so it was, the study was saying that about 46 to 50% of people that are LGBTQ don't announce that in their place of work, and what they were saying was, when they're not able to essentially be themselves, they're less productive.
There you go.
And a lot of times, whenever, in the workplace, you'll come in, obviously it's not always just about work. So you'll talk about what you did over the weekend.
Absolutely.
And so when people are telling these stories, they're like trying to figure out ways to not reveal that, hey, if I'm a male, I was hanging out with another male. That's my partner.
Exactly.
And what's interesting is I used to train a guy when I owned my gym, and he was LGBTQ. Yeah. I only knew through a mutual friend that he was dating. So I had a friend, he was dating my friend's friend. Right. So
you heard it through the grapevine.
I heard it through the grapevine. And so it was interesting because when I would train him, I knew this about him, but I never brought it up.
Right.
But he would intentionally speak to me and say, yeah, man, I went out with this girl, this weekend.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Didn't his parents send him to some camp or
yeah,
something?
they sent him to this camp.
Yes.
For and he had like shock treatment trying to, rid him of this homosexuality, what they say.
Right.
And
incredible.
It was just very, interesting to me because I'm like, man, this guy really has to, and I was in no place, to say, hey, no, I know this about you. Because, I'm like, I don't know how to approach. Yeah, exactly.
Not relevant at all.
That's not relevant, exactly. But when he's telling the story, like I can look in his eyes and I'm like, it's just sad that you as a person have, you feel like, because, I'm a hetero male, I love women.
Right.
And so I feel like he felt pressure to say that. Now, he was a tall, attractive male.
Right.
And so I guess he expected me to think that he was like me, I guess. In a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was very interesting. But, with that research of, people not being able to be themselves, I just, my stance is man, we grew up in the church, right?
Yeah.
And, I think religion lays the foundation for the oppression of women and, LGBTQ.
Exactly.
And I think it's very sad because you're teaching people that they're right to hate people, and I used to legitimately believe like, oh man, this person gay, like in our church, I don't think we might have recognized maybe one or two males, who were feminine.
Yeah.
If we can label them feminine.
Exactly right.
Yeah. We recognize that, but in our minds, we were thinking like, man, I feel bad for them.
Right.
Because this is what we're being taught. We were teenagers at the time.
Exactly.
And so, it's important for us to address this topic because I felt, to this day, now with education, and, being, more mature, you start to realize like, why is it? Because obviously from doing the studying with race, we look and we're like, people generally don't like us because of the color of our skin.
I know, right?
But then we'll turn around and not like people because of who they love,
Period.
or what they identify as.
Right.
And so, we personally let the religion thing go. And the way I am, everyone's an individual.
Yes.
And it's either you're good or you're bad. Really, that's how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, you do good things,
Exactly.
and you do bad things, right?
In my own way,
Of
how
course,
I
right.
define it.
Yes,
like
sir.
either you try to hurt people or you don't, right? You try to help people or you don't. Like
that's it.
that's the way I view people. And I don't know. I felt we have these conversations,
Yes.
about how we used to be into the church, and we didn't have a, I think thankful that we weren't guilty of any violence or crimes against
Right.
the LGBTQ community, but at the same time, my thoughts of being like, well, I can't believe that. It's like,
Exactly.
even when it comes to like, I know you say you want to have children, right? People will sit here. You have hetero, couples who have children, and these children don't get love. They don't get attention. They don't get anything. Or these children you have hetero people who have children to give them up for adoption. But then when they're okay with them being in this system where it shows that there's a lot of abuse that goes on,
Yeah.
and they're being used for money, right? But they have a big problem when this couple of the LGBTQ community want to adopt a child. And I'm like,
Child needs a mother and a father, right?
That's what
right,
they
that's
say,
what,
right?
that's what they say.
Uh-huh.
More so than anything, children need love.
That's it.
If you have people that want to give children love, why are we against that?
Exactly, right?
Why?
And to piggyback off
Yeah.
of that, I mean, of course, you're more so getting into the discriminatory practices or whatever, right?
Yes.
And so I would want to ask you, in your experience, have you experienced discrimination, or do you know of people who have experienced discrimination because of how they identify gender-wise or their sexual preference?
Yes and no. I mean,
Okay.
obviously, like, I do know people. I mean, obviously, there's the cases going to the Supreme Court right now,
Yes,
right?
yes.
I mean, people's, like, I guess, sexual orientation is not necessarily protected at this point in the workplace,
Right.
Where you have, in a lot of states, I mean, in a lot of states, people can fire you just for whatever reason they want.
Exactly,
They don't
yeah.
even have
Right
to
to
tell you,
work.
right? Arizona being one of them.
Yeah. Right to work.
But, that in the workplace, it, in some places more so than others is a really big issue.
Right.
I think, even though we're in a red state, like, being in an urban space, that is relatively liberal.
Yep.
Being white, I think being, like, identified as a woman, I think we watch people that we identify as men, we watch them more closely.
Yeah.
I think that's a part of patriarchy, right?
Yes.
Yeah, great
Trans women are more at risk than trans men.
Okay.
Okay,
You know,
and
so people who
define those really quickly.
Yeah.
So, because some people don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
So a trans woman would be woman who I guess like was not assigned the like femininity
Right.
like at birth,
Okay.
right? Was like raised to be a man.
Okay.
Okay.
Was socialized, in many cases to be a man.
Yes.
And yeah, so like definitely like if I can just put like a very small PSA out there, like if somebody is a trans woman, like do not call them he. You know,
Right.
even if she used to be a he,
Yeah.
you know,
Right,
like
right.
she identifies as a woman, she's a woman,
Yes.
she's a she. You
Right.
know,
And-
like
and
it's pretty simple.
it's
I know
all-
that you
yeah.
guys are on board with that.
Yes.
All about
You know,
respect.
yeah, it's all about respect. You
Yes.
know, we do what we can to call people what it is that they want to be called. You know, it's not
You don't
hard.
lose
Right?
any
You want to
sleep.
be called African American.
Right.
I call you African American. I want you to call me they. It
Right.
might be difficult for you because you're used to using different language.
Yes.
And, like we met in a professional setting, so it's only today that you are finding out. that-
Right. I'm like,
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Because, like, we make decisions, based on, like, how much energy do I really want to put into this?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, like, I mean, I was bullied in like high school a little bit
okay.
around it, but like not in a big way. Honestly, I think like.
So when you say bully, like what did you experience?
Well, when I moved, so after freshman year of high school, I moved with my mom. She had just finished her PhD, so she was starting to, you know how they bounce you around in academia. We were talking about that.
Right?
So we were living in Bridgewater, Massachusetts, of all places, for 2 years. And, you know, I had short hair. I was like a sort of, you know, butch kid.
Right.
I always was. But I, you know, had a boyfriend in middle school, and I loved him. I was attracted to him, you know, like he turned out to be gay, actually.
Wow.
Funny enough. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He like broke up with me partway through 9th grade, and I was like, what?
Yeah,
He
yeah.
was like, I'm gay. I'm like, all right, that's fine. You know,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
and we laughed about how like it, you know, we must have gotten along so well because I'm a pretty masculine woman.
Right.
You know what I mean? That like
Okay.
I was a good match for him because
Okay.
you know, whatever.
Okay.
It was a
Right.
joke, but I still, you know, thought I was straight. Because there's just not a whole lot of like space
Yes.
for people to explore their
Flat
gender
out.
and explore their sexuality at a young age.
Exactly.
And yeah, so I moved to Massachusetts, and people were like, "Oh, are you a lesbian? This and that. You must be a lesbian, like this and that." And I was like, "I don't think so.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
I don't have a problem with it either, but like I don't know,
Yeah.
Right.
you know." And man, I got really mad when I like realized it. You know, like when I came to terms with the fact that like, oh, my love of women is like not just I like really want them to like me. Like
Yeah.
I didn't like just want to be friends with them. Like,
Right.
oh, okay, there's other stuff going on here. Then I was so mad because
Yeah.
they were right. You know what I mean? Like that was I did not like being like stereotyped, or like
Exactly.
having somebody identify me based on like what they saw,
Yes.
Exactly.
as opposed to who I was telling them I was. That really bothered me. So like to find out that like, and it's not even true they were right. Like
Exactly.
they
Okay.
were not right, honestly.
Exactly.
You know,
Okay.
because like it's all about respect, right?
Yeah.
Bottom line.
But yeah, you know, there's like, I think, I don't know, I was like just marginally like, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
My this is, you know, I don't have like my I can't articulate it super well, but
Right.
like I find that like, you know, I said people's eyes are on men more so
Yes.
than women.
Absolutely.
People have a lot of issues with gay men, I feel like.
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely.
And similarly, people have a lot of issues with trans women.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think because of patriarchy,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we are so troubled.
Yeah.
We are so troubled by men or people who I see as men or identify as men,
Yes.
not dominating women,
Okay.
you know, and not like lifting up their masculinity to
Yes.
like the highest degree,
Yeah.
right? I mean, anything below that,
Yes.
Yes.
and it is below that,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
Is like it's not okay, and I think it's like, you know, it is, you know, it is anti to
Yes.
patriarchy and like
Yes.
what patriarchy represents. So,
Yeah.
you know, I have never experienced like violence
Okay.
Right.
on my person.
Yes.
Like definitely not physical violence.
Yes.
I know that does happen in some like more rural spaces. You know, I
Absolutely.
know that I
Even
know
globally.
stories, you know, in
Sheesh.
history and whatnot.
Uh-huh.
But like I find that for the most part, as an otherwise very privileged human,
Right.
like my identity as a lesbian was like not an issue.
Okay.
Okay.
If anything, like I felt like desexualized by society, and
Exactly.
that wasn't fun as like a teenager,
Okay,
you know, and
exactly.
like a young adult.
Yes.
Like you want to be hot, you want to be cool, you want to be sexy, you want to be all these things, but like a masculine woman is not generally.
True.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
The idea that you have in your head is like a 40-something-year-old like butch bull dyke,
Right.
you know, with a bit of a belly and you know buzz cut and
There you
like
go.
and she's not sexy at all, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, but I don't know. I mean, like when I see the violence that is perpetuated, you know, like how many trans women of color have died this year? Like, I
Oh
don't
my
even,
gosh.
I don't even know.
And I wanted to ask you a question
and
about
here
that.
I am, like, I'm fine. You know, I
Uh-huh.
walk down the street. I'm not worried about, people might say some shit to me, but they really don't.
Yes.
Right.
You're
No,
fine.
you good.
You're fine.
You good.
Try to keep it professional.
No, you good.
That's
Trust.
okay. Yes.
But-
We're not regulated by the FCC. So
You're right. You had a
but I wanted to ask you, what do you think about a trans woman failing to disclose that previous life to a man? Because this is when you talk about the trans women of color who have been murdered and become victims of violence, right? What do you think about? Do you believe that it's something that a trans woman or a trans man should disclose to someone whenever they go into a relationship with them, or not? Because I've heard people say that in a sense they kind of felt like they were taken advantage of or raped because they had sex with somebody that they would never have had sex with had they had known these things. So, I've heard these type of things. So it's like, how do you feel about that? What do you think about? Do you think that they should disclose that? I mean, and me personally, because of the violence, I think they should for their own protection.
Yeah.
But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, get right into it, I guess.
I mean, because it's a hot topic, like you just brought up.
I think, like, my gut reaction is, like, nobody has to do anything.
Exactly,
and
right?
you shouldn't have to do anything to keep your body safe.
I totally agree.
There are certain things that, like, that I would talk with somebody about before I, get naked with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, about our bodies, about what we like and don't like.
Yeah, exactly.
There's
True.
lots of conversations that I would have.
Yes.
I feel like that, like, embedded in that question is, like, a lot around, like, a lot of, I mean, not necessarily that you're making assumptions, but, what does their body look like and comprise of at that point in time, and, like, what did it in the past? Like, I don't know. I mean, if you're talking about, like, a trans woman who has undergone, like, all surgeries that are, like, available, and she has, like, seemingly heterosexual sex with a heterosexual man, I don't think he has any. That's.
I mean, and
I don't know.
Yeah,
That's also. I mean, it's something that I just don't. I don't really know about. I mean, you're getting into stuff that is, I don't have, like, close, like, trans women in my life.
Okay.
So, I know what I have, like, learned from the internet. I could probably just know about as much as you do.
Right. I mean, and again, I mean, I wouldn't say that they have to. I would, for if I had a friend, I would, for their protection, I would say you may want to.
Yes.
I would say you may want to, because I wouldn't want you to find yourself in a position where someone felt like you violated them.
Yeah.
Because however they feel is how they feel about it. So again, for me,
I think a lot of, like binary trans people.
Yeah.
So, like, I technically, like, I am a trans person, right? Because I was raised to be a woman, but I do not identify as a woman today.
Exactly.
But, like, binary trans people, male to female, female to male, sometimes they have surgeries done, sometimes they don't.
Exactly.
Yes.
Gender is different from sex,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
In fact, like, I have learned more recently from, like, the intersex community that, like, your genitals don't even determine your sex.
Exactly.
There are so many different aspects to our bodies, and the way and the hormones, levels of hormones that we have in our body. I have chin hairs, I have, like, more testosterone, I guess, than many other women do at my age. You generally don't see women growing chin hairs until they're, like, or females rather, sorry.
Exactly.
So, like, it's just, all of it is not simple. But I do think that, like from my experience, people that I know, there are many binary trans people who are not interested in being like out and about their transness.
Exactly.
You will find more like genderqueer people being like, this is part of my identity.
Exactly.
True.
Whereas you see a lot of like binary trans people who like they just feel like they were born in the wrong body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm not gay.
Yep.
Right.
I'm not a part of the LGBTQ. I don't want to be.
Oh, okay.
I just want to
Yes.
be seen as who I am, which is a woman.
Okay.
So like, does she want to talk about that with,
exactly.
you know, she identifies as a heterosexual woman.
Yeah.
She's not gonna even want to talk, you know, like,
Exactly. That's a great point.
you know,
Yes.
and is there some like level of like internalized like homophobia in that or like transphobia in that? Maybe, but that's not for me to,
Exactly.
you know, make any judgments about. So
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I do see what you're saying about, you know, we of course want people to be safe.
Absolutely.
But my focus like would be more so on like all heterosexual men
Exactly.
that need to,
True.
you know, that should, if we're going to talk about shoulds,
Yes.
Absolutely.
should respect all women,
Yes. Yeah.
should respect all people and not do harm to them.
Absolutely.
And again,
and recognize that things are complicated
Exactly.
and, you know, oppression has so many faces.
Absolutely.
And you
I
know, we
totally
might
agree.
find ourselves in sticky situations where, you know, like you said, like I have sex with somebody that I may or may not have if I had known
Yeah,
XYZ. It's
Exactly.
like, man, dude, what is the point of like sweating that kind of stuff?
Exactly.
That's just like, move on.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't want to be with that person.
Yeah.
You're a
Bye.
homophobe. You're a transphobe.
Exactly.
Move on.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
Okay.
respect that person and walk away. And you know, you don't. What's the point of holding that kind of
Right.
toxicity?
Yes. And I agree. I totally agree as far as, like you said, you know, I think as far as, you know, hetero men and just men in general, I think as we grow up, again, we're in a very patriarchal society, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that I just saw a colleague of mine just share something on social media that was saying how men can cry, you know, men can have feelings and all these things, and it doesn't make them any less of a man. And me personally, I have 3 sons. And so that's what I'm teaching my sons.
Yeah.
It's okay to cry, you know, it's okay to be emotional, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that as a society, we can do a better job of more so, because there's no static definition of what a man is, but
Yeah.
you know, there are some just common traits, right?
Exactly.
You know, that, you know, as Dr. Lawfrey said, you know, men can be angry and they can be lustful, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, I think it's so much more because we're all human beings, right? And we all experience emotions and feelings that we should be allowed to express, as opposed to, okay, well, society capped us here, you know, and blocked us here. So, okay, I got to remain in this box, in this lane. So I definitely believe as a society and educating our children that, you know, we can kind of lighten up on that.
Yes.
And not kind of, but drastically lighten up on, okay, well, this is what it takes to be a man, and you should act this way, and so on and so forth. I just think that, you know, we should, you know, again, just embrace our children, love them, raise them up,
Yeah.
and, you know, just kind of let them grow and see what happens. So,
Yeah.
Shoulds are a really like
You know?
weird thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, what about what is like just authentic to you, right?
Come on, right?
exactly.
I mean, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I think like I do in some ways like ideally see feminism as something that could do what people who don't identify as feminists are actually doing in the world.
Right.
Yes.
Like, you know, unfortunately, you know, first and, you know, second wave feminism, it's like, you know, oftentimes dropped, you know, people of color,
Yes.
dropped people who
Absolutely.
are not like born women, this
There
like
you go.
very like
True.
female, like
True.
I don't
Yeah.
know what you know, who
Yes.
knows?
Oh,
Who knows?
yeah.
I'm not a part of that, so I don't know from what trauma they're coming from. But
Yes.
but the aspect of like feminism being that women should be able to be whoever it is that they want to be. They should not be limited by their physical form or their gender.
Exactly.
I mean, the same should go for men, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And Bell Hooks has a really amazing book called The Will to Change, and it is all about the way that patriarchy has affected and affects men. She talks about being raised. Her and she has a brother. Just thinking about how patriarchy affected the two of them, in sort of parallel ways, right? Because they grew up in the same household. Really, really beautiful stuff, right? And I actually see I've seen in like a handful of, like Hollywood movies, men crying, like actual tears. Yes, it's amazing, right? I mean, all people should be taught the things that women are taught or girls are taught. All people should be taught what boys are taught. And all people should be able to have the freedom to express what it is that they want to express. For me, that's what it means to be gender nonconforming. Like that's the significance for me. Is like me saying like I don't want to like be limited to only this set of things.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's rad to have people who identify as women saying the same thing.
Exactly.
And people identifying as men saying the same thing. For me, ideally, like we just don't have that. Like I said, like, I don't even know if we had a world where gender didn't exist, would there even be like sexual orientations? Like would there be would we still, like, as individuals, be attracted only to a certain genitalia or certain physical characteristics? I actually don't know. And it's like I said, I like have identified as a lesbian, and sometimes I still do, just like because it's fun. I like to call myself a dyke or something. I'm a dyke. But like I was thinking about this when you approached me. I'm like, I guess, like, can I call myself a lesbian if I'm gender queer? Your orientation, once you don't subscribe to a gender, like homosexual, does that mean, I guess, other gender non-conforming people? And if I am attracted to women, I guess that makes me heterosexual because I am attracted to somebody who has a gender that is different from mine. So, oh goodness, I love it. I love that. I think we should all be so much more confused than we are. I think all of the times that we are able to create boxes and put people in them, whether it's race or gender or sexual orientation or whatnot. Once we do that, we're not paying attention to them anymore as a human, right?
True.
No, we're not. And I think it's very important, just for maybe some of our listeners or viewers, that sex and gender are not synonymous. Right? So sex is, male, female. So you have the XX, which is female, or the XY, which is the male, right?
Right, but you also have,
right, and then you have more, right?
Yeah,
you have more, and that's funny because I teach about that, the intersex, right? Babies are born that, but we have just defined sex to biology, right? That's pretty much what we as a society in this country, for sure, define what sex is, and so. Like you say, it's not necessarily binary.
And it should be stated that, like, we as a society are so committed to the binary.
Yes, we are.
That we perform surgery on newborn babies that do not conform.
Yeah.
Mostly we make them female.
Yeah, absolutely.
We force their bodies to fit into this binary because we are so hard pressed to maintain it. And that, like, end surgeries on babies, surgeries on babies. That is, it is like, I have rough. Like chills on my body of how wrong it is, like thinking about it. Oh my gosh.
That's
like,
rough.
Yeah. And so all of it is more complicated. You have sex, you can talk about chromosomes, you can talk about primary and secondary, and I don't even know kind of characteristics of those things, right? That get into the things that we generally, like, you generally don't know the genitalia of people, right? And still we're identifying people as male and female, right?
That's a
We
fact.
don't need to see their junk to know or to think that we know, right? Because you're looking at the jawline, you're looking at you're listening to the voice, you're looking for where there is and is not hair, you know. Some of that is biological, some of that is like your gender expression.
Exactly.
So we then take it upon ourselves to make adjustments to our bodies, right? To present a certain way. Like like how long our hair is, or, you know, whether we keep or take off hair that we have around our body, you know.
True.
Most like women are like, make sure that they don't have any hair here. Make sure they don't have hair here. Make sure they don't have hair here, you know, and they don't, you know, like even some women will shave their arms because they don't want to be perceived as too hairy, because to be hairy is to be a man, you know. But yeah, it is all very complicated, and none of it is, you know, you can chop it up 100 different ways, and I don't even understand the full complexity of it, you know, and that's why I love that you guys are just sort of, you know, at the end of the day, we need to get down to like it is respect, respect of people.
That's all that it comes down to.
Openness for people to be able to be whatever it is and whoever it is that they want to be.
I haven't lost not a second of sleep over someone's sexual identity or their gender identity. I haven't lost a second of sleep.
There are
I just
people
can't
who
understand.
have, man. There are a lot of people.
Why are you so
who
consumed in how someone? It drives me crazy because. And again, I've always stated, especially to my students, I'll state, these should not be political issues. This shouldn't be a political issue. Like, we're so concerned about who people love and what they identify as. How about we talk about systemic racism and oppression, period? How about we put the energy right there with actual tangible, palpable results where we can actually see that these people are discriminated against because of the way they look and what they identify as. Why aren't we investing energy into that?
Because this is the distraction for them. This is to
the
continue to create that division and not get to the root of the real problem.
Come on, man.
You know, the biggest thing is we as a society, you know, by all these boxes, like you said, now you're no longer a human. I never look at you like that, right? But if we don't put people in boxes and just say, look at that human right there. I'm gonna say hi to this human. Hey, how you doing? You know, and you greet them with respect and kindness. Why can't that just be the mindset, you know, globally? Like, I mean, obviously, you know, it's gotten to this point, and I think the best way to undo a lot of that is to have these conversations.
Absolutely.
And people read and educate and, you know, just have some compassion for other people's stories. You know, just learn that, you know, your world is not the only world that exists.
Come on now.
You know, and then we just need to, obviously, I think maturity comes with that. And we just need to kind of also put that foolish pride to the side.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, always wanting to just be right. Always wanting to stick to, you know, what we know, what we learned.
Epistemic values, man.
Exactly. And that can go with a lot of different things, you know, as far as, you know, oppression.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, as a male, we know women are oppressed. We know that.
Clearly.
And that's why I'm very, you know, when it comes to women equality, I'm right on board because I don't think a man is better than a woman, you know. I mean, and that's how we label them, men and women.
Right.
But you know, I just believe that like I said, these conversations are good. And you know, with all being said, obviously a lot has been said. I feel like I've learned something in this conversation because, like you said, it's about respect. And so when you're talking, I'm listening.
Absolutely.
So I want to make sure I'm checking myself, you know, when I address you, you know, and you know, moving forward. And I think our viewers and listeners, you know, can learn something as well. And I'm sure there are some who actually might not have even, you know, exposed, you know, who they really are to the world. And I hope they just feel comfortable enough to do so.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I hope we can have some discourse, some dialogue about that. I know it's a sensitive topic. You know, some people don't want to come out just, you know, publicly about it, but just know that, you know, if you do want to talk, you know, you can inbox us. And we'll be happy to talk about this thing. I know we don't identify with the community, but we are very supportive of it. You know, we don't, we don't have any humans, exactly.
It's crazy.
Yeah, you know, it's just, you know, obviously there are these lines that have been created, and it's like if that's what you identify as, or you think you do, then you know, people need to know that there's support out there.
Bottom line.
But Go ahead.
If I could just get, I know that we're wrapping up. I can feel it.
Go ahead. Yes. Go ahead.
But I just, like in terms of like thinking about creating a world that is more open.
Yes.
I'll tell you like one of the main reasons why like it is that I don't share openly my gender, particularly in the workplace and whatnot, particularly with people of like older generations, is there's a lot of like hesitance around like the pronoun thing specifically really bothers people. Yes. Because they're looking, the way they fundamentally are looking at the world, and I mean myself too to a certain extent, like I'm still unraveling this stuff. Absolutely. And it doesn't mean that you guys are bad or anybody out there is bad because they look at the world this way. We're socialized to, but we look out and we see men and women, you know, and we look out and we see he and her, she and him, and so like it is a big shift to use different pronouns. Yes. It's a big shift to like talk about people in a way that is not constantly bringing up gender.
Yes.
Because you know, like it would be awkward to just call people by their name like all the time.
Yeah.
But like there are like a few things that you can like do to just sort of like practice.
Yeah, okay. I
like I was telling you guys earlier, unfortunately we weren't rolling, but I only came to see myself as gender non-conforming when I had a friend, the amazing Vern, who does not gender people until they expose their gender to Vern.
Yeah.
So like because I did not say, hey Vern, I identify as a woman, please call me she, her, and whatnot. They just called me they. They just it's neutral.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
I am not calling out your womanhood or your manhood.
There you go.
I'm just, whatever. And like call people like that person, that you jogged my memory because you said that human, look at that human.
Yes,
there you go.
You know, I am teaching myself by practicing that.
Yes.
Like I think in my head, look at that human instead of look at that woman.
Right.
And when I say it out loud, I say, look at that human or look at that person, you know, I don't need to call them a woman. Like it doesn't matter. I like what I'm seeing.
Exactly.
There you go. Right on.
You know, but practicing, my partner says I identify your dog as they and practice it on your dog.
Okay.
Because your dog doesn't care.
Exactly.
Your dog has no idea what you're
point.
saying. You know, they know when food is coming
There you
and
go.
that's about it.
There you go.
Just like practicing.
Exactly.
And like as much as we can do to just use neutral language, I think creates a space where people like can feel more comfortable.
Agreed.
Like if I hear people like not using he, she, woman, man, like all the time to talk about things, I pick up on that as a gender non-conforming person. Exactly. If I I'm hanging out with somebody who's like, oh, look at that person, this person, or like this human that I know, as opposed to this woman that I know, and that kind of thing.
Yes.
I pick up on that, and I'm like, oh, this is a person who's cool. You know, like this is somebody who is actively working to undo a lot of the assumptions that we make in our lives.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
So I want to leave that like with you guys, leave it with the listeners. You know, like find ways, low stakes ways that you can start to like de-gender your language and make the world more safe for.
Oh yeah. You know, it's amazing because what crossed my mind is you'll have men and or people identify as men, right?
Mm-hmm.
So quickly can go to the whole degendered terms, pronouns, whenever they're talking to their woman.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If they say like well, I have a friend, because they don't want to say
Exactly.
my friend is a woman. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
So you can do it so quickly then.
Yeah.
You know what I
When you
mean? So
don't
it's
wanna-
like,
yeah.
and they told me this.
You got the neutral.
You got the neutral, because then it's like,
Yeah.
you never identified that this was a female, that's your friend, right?
Exactly.
So that just crossed my
That's
mind,
beautiful.
because I've done that before.
That was very
Yes.
good.
You know what I mean? So
Yes.
it's
Build on that.
Yeah.
bottom line,
Use
right?
it.
So we can do it. You
But
know?
like you said, you don't look at people as being bad because they don't do it yet. Right? Exactly.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Not at all.
But
I mean, Vincent introduced me as she.
Right,
Because
exactly.
It's just habit,
Exactly.
And
Just
you
habit.
only just found out
I know, I'm like, God,
an
you
hour
gotta
and a
let me
half
know.
ago.
But
Like, we cool enough, you gotta let me know.
But that's cool that you felt like, damn, I hope I didn't disrespect you. When
Exactly.
you said it.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, if your name is Canned Good, if you introduce yourself as that, that's what I'm gonna call you, is Canned Good. I'm not gonna call you Good, and I'm not gonna call you Canned.
Right.
Until you tell me to call you Canned.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get it. But anyway, it's just once again about respect human beings.
This is awesome.
Because
This is awesome.
at the end of the day, we're all just trying to make a living.
Come on, man.
And experience the good side of
Make a
life.
good life.
Bottom line, that's it,
So
right?
just don't be the person making other people's lives, bad because you
Exactly.
got a problem with them when what they do is none of your business. So
That's a fact.
that's the biggest thing is mind your business. If you don't have anything nice to say, just don't say anything at all.
Thanks, Thumper.
Yeah, that's it. But like I said, we learned a lot. It was a great
Yes.
conversation.
Yeah,
Oh
thank
my
you
God.
Just want to thank you
Oh,
for coming by
Thank you
and
guys.
being willing to
Thank
have
you.
this conversation with us.
Seriously.
With all being said, we're gonna wrap it up.
Yes.
And this is the end of today, and we will see you later. Wave to the camera,
All right.
everybody.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Bye.